The Syracuse tight end room may surprise you this season.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, everyone. Jackson Holzer, Locked On Syracuse. On today's show, we are previewing Syracuse football's tight end room for the upcoming 2026 college football season. We'll go over the depth of the unit. We will talk about the leaders of this position group. But bottom line is that this is a position group that's going to need somebody, if not multiple guys, to emerge. This is a position group that on the surface, there is not a lot of proven production, at least from a receiving standpoint. Blocking, sure. Receiving-wise, not a lot of proven production. It's very similar to the wide receiver room in that regard. We've talked all off season about how Syracuse needs some wide receivers to really step up in order for the unit to be successful because they don't have a lot of proven production. Very similar with this tight end group. Dan Villari, who was the starter last year for Syracuse, he ran out of eligibility. He cannot come back, even with the fifth-year eligibility ruling, because Dan Villari is not in the class of 2022. He was in the class of 2021, so he's not impacted by the judge's ruling out in Colorado, which is, how Syracuse basketball got Amari Monroe. Oronde Gadsden, who was a star for Syracuse, well, he is now 2 seasons removed from being a star with Syracuse. Now he is with the LA Chargers in the NFL. And let's hope he has a big season. And I especially want him to have a big season because he's on my dynasty fantasy football team. But that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about the leaders of this tight end room and try to convince ourselves if at least one of these players can actually emerge. Can we do that? Let's find out. Well, number one, you got David Clement. David Clement is 6'6". He is 260 pounds and a senior. He has been with Syracuse since 2023, mostly as a blocking tight end. This is a player who has 3 career catches. That's it. All of them came last season for David Clement. However, this could be the season for him where we finally see David Clement showcase his receiving skills. Past years, he's been blocked. Dan Villari was clearly ahead of him. In 2024, you had Oronde Gadsden and Dan Villari both ahead of him. Now, he's got a clear-cut opportunity to emerge for Syracuse as one of the starting tight ends for this unit. And if he can break out, obviously, that would be a big deal for Syracuse football because, as I've said, he's mostly been used as a blocking tight end. 3 career catches with Syracuse entering his 4th season. But in fall camp, he has been getting a lot of positive reviews. So clearly, he is taking steps forward in his development. And like I just mentioned, he's got all the opportunity in the world. There is no clear-cut tight end that is ahead of him. So he has certainly got an opportunity. That's not to say that there isn't any competition for David Clement to be the number 1 tight end on this team. Noah Meyers from Western Kentucky, who we're going to talk about in a moment, can certainly challenge him in that regard. But David Clement, if he can emerge as the starting tight end for Syracuse, is in line for a breakout season. Because if you're a number 1 tight end with Steve Angeli throwing you the football and you're in the Jeff Nixon offense, well, you're due for a pretty good season. You're going to certainly get a lot of opportunities to have a really strong season. For context, let's talk about Dan Villari here for a moment. I know that Dan Villari, especially heading into last season, was more established than David Clement. Nobody's going to argue against that. He was a more established player. But he shattered his previous receiving career highs last season when he had Steve Angeli as his quarterback and also Jeff Nixon as his offensive coordinator. He had 39 catches for 412 yards, and his previous career high was in 2023. It was 20 catches for 180 yards. And I want you to keep in mind that while 39 catches for a little over 400 yards doesn't sound all that impressive, I understand that. Remember, Steve Angeli got hurt and what that did to the offense. Everybody suffered on offense. Everybody's numbers went down when Steve Angeli got injured. So odds are, if Angeli had remained healthy, Dan Villari would have had much better receiving numbers. Maybe he catches 50 passes for 600 yards instead of 39 for 412. And 39 for 412, when your previous career high is 20 for 180, is still a significant step forward in development. So what does this mean for David Clement? Well, it means that if he can emerge as the number one tight end for Syracuse, well, then he's going to be given every opportunity in the world to have a breakout season for Syracuse football. And my prediction, and maybe I'm being a little too conservative here because there's another tight end that we're going to talk about that certainly is worthy of our attention. But my prediction is David Clement is going to catch at least 20 passes. And considering he's only got 3 catches for his career, if he snags 20 balls this season, that is a breakout year. It may not be flashy. It might not jump off the page. It might not excite NFL draft scouts, but it is a much bigger season than what he has done in the past, at least from a receiving standpoint. So that's David Clement. Do you guys think that David Clement is going to emerge for Syracuse football? Feel free to leave your thoughts right now in the comment section below. Now, coming up here on Locked On Syracuse, we mentioned Noah Meyers earlier in this segment from Western Kentucky. He could also be a really intriguing piece of this Syracuse offense. So we'll talk about him next on Locked On Syracuse. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. You got one app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focused on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent, it's about having everyone working toward the same goal, and that's true in sports just like it is in business. I mean, there was a recent move for Syracuse basketball where everything was aligned. Jerry McNamara did a good job of keeping an open roster spot available. Then you had the class of 2022 ruling that everyone got an extra year of eligibility if you're in the class of 2022. And Jerry McNamara was smart. Leave a roster spot open in case the court ruled in favor of the class of 2022. And that's how Syracuse was ultimately able to land Amari Monroe from Quinnipiac. Great organizations win because operations matter. And that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. Locked On Syracuse, I'm Jackson Holzer. Another leader for the Syracuse football tight end room is Noah Meyers. Noah Meyers is 6'5". He's 245 pounds, and he is a senior. Transfer from Western Kentucky this past offseason. He spent his first 3 seasons in college football over there. Meyers is a more proven pass catcher than David Clement, and he's also reportedly doing well in fall camp. Meyers broke out last season at Western Kentucky with 32 catches for almost 360 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I think that Meyers and Clement are going to complement each other well, and they can combine to have productive seasons for Syracuse football. You got Meyers, who can be more of a go-to receiving threat, lines up perhaps a little bit more out wide. You have David Clement, who's already shown he can be a good blocking tight end. He can start in line and then release as a potential option for Steve Angeli. So overall, David Clement, Noah Meyers. Neither of them are Oronde Gadsden, okay? Syracuse does not have that clear-cut number one tight end that is going to lead the entire offense at the tight end spot, which is pretty rare for all of college football, even in pro football as well, to have a tight end that is that good, which Syracuse had with Oronde Gadsden, okay? Syracuse does not have that. Could they maybe have another Dan Valori? That's possible. Dan Valori is a good player and was a Swiss Army knife, but you can certainly replicate the production he had this past season. But when I view Clement and Meyers, I see two tight ends that could be capable of catching passes. And if they're able to do that, they can combine to be one of the better tight end rooms in the ACC. Steve Angeli is throwing the football. Jeff Nixon is still the offensive coordinator of Syracuse football. And we know with Jeff Nixon as the OC, with a functioning quarterback, that this is a team that can store a lot of points and throw for a bunch of yards. And if Steve Angeli is throwing for a bunch of yards, someone's got to be on the receiving end of it, in which case it could be the tight ends. So when you view David Clement and Noah Meyers, they can both combine to have a big season for Syracuse football. It would not surprise me if you have David Clement and Noah Meyers combined for 60 catches. It's not one player doing it. It's not one player with all the production, but it could be multiple tight ends that are able to thrive in this Syracuse offense. So what do you guys think about the top of the tight end room for Syracuse, David Clement and Noah Meyers? Comment your thoughts in the comments section below. Now let's talk about the depth of this tight end room. There's a lot of competition. It is still pretty unclear how the depth chart is going to shake out outside of the top two, where you have David Clement and you have Noah Meyers. First up, you got Daunte Bacheyie, 6'5", 225-pound sophomore, a three-star Syracuse tight end recruit in the class of 2025. Last season as a true freshman, credit to him, he did get on the field. He played in 10 games. It was mostly on special teams, but we also saw a little bit of pass catching from him as well. Caught 5 passes for 42 yards, and that was in 4 separate games. I do believe that when he was in high school, he was originally a wide receiver, but obviously he's making the transition to tight end, and he was doing it last year with Syracuse. And if the Syracuse website is correct and 24/7 Sports is also correct, then Daunte Bacheyie is certainly on the right track to developing as a tight end. What do I mean by that? He needed to put on some muscle. He needed to put on some weight. When he committed to Syracuse, if you look at his 24/7 Sports page, he was listed at 205 pounds, but now you look at the Syracuse website, he is listed at 225. Probably still needs to put on a little bit more weight for Syracuse. Oronde Gadsden, as good as he was a little bit on the smaller end. And even if you look at his profile on the Syracuse website, he was listed at 236 pounds. And that was more of a smaller tight end. It's kind of weird calling Oronde Gadsden small, but you get the idea. So for this season, back to Daunte Bacheyie, I don't expect him to have much of a role for Syracuse, especially when you have David Clement and Noah Meyers as the clear-cut 1 and 2 on the depth chart. However, he is a piece to keep in mind down the road. So not for this season, but maybe in future seasons, he can really emerge for Syracuse football. You also got Clark Calloway. Clark Calloway is 6'4". He's 260 pounds. He is a junior. He has been with Syracuse since 2024. He was previously a defensive lineman, but now he is making the switch to tight end. If and when he gets on the field, I suspect it's mostly going to be for blocking purposes, whether it's short yardage situations, goal-to-go situations, maybe on special teams as well. However, from a receiving standpoint, I don't anticipate Clark Calloway playing much of a role in that regard for Syracuse football this upcoming season. But hey, you never know. Maybe in future years, he's able to develop that. But right now, he has certainly got the size to at least line up on the inside for Syracuse football at tight end this upcoming season. When we come back here on Locked On Syracuse, we will continue going over the depth that this tight end room has, and then we will be dishing out our final thoughts for this tight end room. Stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. Support for today's episode comes from Indeed Sponsored Jobs. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps connect employers with candidates who match specific skills, certifications, and location, so less time gets spent searching and more time gets spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. And the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. And one great addition can have a huge ripple effect on everyone around them. Let's talk about 2024. Syracuse hires Fran Brown as the new head coach. And hey, they needed a quarterback. It was a good roster. He was able to retain a lot of talent, even brought in Fadil Diggs. That was a big addition too on the defense. But that team needed a quarterback. They needed a real system caller, a real engine, and it was Kyle McCord. He transferred from Ohio State. It worked out in a huge way for Syracuse, and he was one of the main reasons why Syracuse won 10 games in 2024. And we saw how much of a difference it makes having a great quarterback versus not having a great quarterback if you are Syracuse football. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Before the NFL season kicks off, everyone is making predictions. Who's going to win the division? Who makes the playoffs in either conference? Who is lifting the Lombardi Trophy? On Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. Will the Buffalo Bills finally win the Super Bowl for their first time in franchise history this season? Well, the Buffalo Bills to win the Super Bowl are currently trading at a probability of, 8% on Kalshi right now, which means a $100 trade for the Buffalo Bills to win the Super Bowl at the time of this recording would pay out close to $1,200 on Kalshi if the Buffalo Bills take home the Lombardi Trophy. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there is no house, and as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. Trade the draft pick, the game, and more on Kalshi. Download the Kalshi app and use code LOCKEDON and get $10 when you trade. $10. KALSHI Kalshi. Trade on anything. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kalshi products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see Kalshi.com/regulatory. Locked on Syracuse, I'm Jackson Holzer. Let's continue talking about Syracuse's tight end room depth, and then we will be giving out our final thoughts for this position group. Next up, you got Elijah Washington Baker, 6'7", 250-pound junior, been with Syracuse since the 2024 season. Last year, he appeared in every game for the Orange, but it was mostly on special teams. He did have one catch last season, and hey, it's the only catch of his career, and it just so happened to go for a 17-yard touchdown against Miami. Now, he is competing with Daunte Bacheyie for third on the tight end depth chart, but similar to Bacheyie, I don't expect Elijah Washington Baker to have a significant role pass catching wise this upcoming season. Both could certainly get on the field as blocking tight ends, and Syracuse would absolutely love if one of these guys can emerge. I mean, they would love if anybody can emerge, but you get the idea. But at least for right now, as we are less than a month away from Syracuse's regular season opener against New Hampshire, it's hard to anticipate Daunte Bacheyie or Elijah Washington Baker playing much of a role, at least from a receiving standpoint, this upcoming season. Rounding out the depth, you got Carter Bashir, 6'5", 260-pound true freshman, 3-star recruit in the class of 2026 out of Philadelphia. He's got good size already, which is obviously encouraging. He can line up inside, he can line up outside, but he is a true freshman, so I am not anticipating him playing much of a role for Syracuse this upcoming season. He's got plenty of guys ahead of him, but he's also got plenty of time to develop, so you might want to keep an eye on him. in future years for Syracuse football. So that's the depth and also the leaders for Syracuse's tight end room for 2026. And before we give our final thoughts on the unit, what are your thoughts on Syracuse's tight end room? Who do you think is going to emerge? Comment in the comments section below. Okay, so final thoughts. Like I said at the very top, I view the tight end room very similar to the wide receiver group, where the ingredients are in place. Syracuse has the quarterback. At least we think they have the quarterback, Steve Angeli. They have the offensive coordinator, Jeff Nixon, who has produced plenty of really good offenses, plenty of explosive offenses, including with Syracuse in 2024 at the beginning of the 2025 season. So the ingredients are in place for somebody to emerge from the tight end group. But there's not a lot of proven production. The difference between the tight ends and the wide receivers is that the wide receivers are legitimately all up for grabs. Whereas with the tight ends, we can really narrow down our focus to the top two players, which is David Clement and Noah Meyers, a transfer from Western Kentucky. If those two players, well, let me rephrase. If Noah Meyers can replicate what he did last year, which is 30 catches for around 350 yards, and David Clement at least can haul in 20 to 30 balls as well, then you are looking at a really productive tight end room. It does not have a clear-cut All-American tight end on it like Oronde Gadsden. It just does not have that. If one of those two guys or somebody else in the unit ends up becoming that, then that is unbelievably amazing for Syracuse and all of us fans. But I don't see that with this tight end room for this upcoming season. It could have the next Dan Villari on it. That is certainly possible. But I view Noah Meyers and David Clement almost as a tandem where they need to combine to have really good production. Because I don't know if either one of them can walk into Syracuse for this upcoming season and catch 50 passes, at least individually. But as a tandem, it is certainly on the table. And if they could do that as a tandem, then you have a pretty good unit. I think we would all take that. So there's no clear-cut number one tight end, but it could still be a solid tight end room. And fortunately, in order to have a really good offense, you do not need to have that ace-like tight end, that clear-cut guy, a Oronde Gadsden, a Brock Bowers, a Tyler Warren. You don't need that to have a really productive offense. If you have multiple tight ends that are contributing, they can accumulate the stats that one of those big fish that I just mentioned would be able to get on their own. So, again, what do you guys think of the tight end room? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Coming up on Locked On Syracuse in the near future, our next episode will either be on Thursday or Friday, depending on timing, but we will go over some of the big position battles for Syracuse football on defense. We have already talked about the offense position battles, and we briefly mentioned the tight ends in that regard. Next up is the defense. And of course, for future episodes, we will continue previewing every single Syracuse football position group for the upcoming 2026 season. This one was tight ends, but we still got a few other position groups to go. So look out for that on Locked On Syracuse in the near future. For now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. And hey, if you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you just do me a quick favor, since you're already here at this point of the podcast, hopefully that means you enjoy Locked On Syracuse. Perhaps you can recommend it to one or two of your closest Syracuse friends. Tell them about the Locked On Syracuse podcast so this channel can grow and reach all Syracuse Orange fans, especially because you got Syracuse football season about 3 weeks away. And if you are a veteran to Locked On Syracuse, you've been a fan for a long time, then you know that I will be giving an instant reaction to every single Syracuse football game throughout the season. And of course, when basketball season rolls around, we'll have reactions to every one of their games as well. So you're going to want to like and subscribe to Locked On Syracuse and tell all your friends. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening, and I will see you all again soon.